Trump has spent his life enthralled to numbers, his wealth, his ratings, his polls. Even during the deadly coronavirus pandemic, he has remained fixated on certain metrics, peppering aides about infection statistics, favoring rosy projections, and obsessing over the gyrating stock market. But as the nation reached a bleak milestone this week, 100,000 Americans dead from the novel coronavirus, Trump has been uncharacteristically silent. The closest the president came to addressing the death toll was a tweet from Tuesday. It reads in part, "For all of the political hacks out there, if I hadn't done my job well and early, we would have lost 1.5 to 2 million people, as opposed to the 100,000 plus that looks like will be the number."
Well, of course, John Heilemann, he didn't do his job, and
no.
He only talks about a toothless ban from China, which, of course, 430,000 people got in from China from the beginning of this pandemic, and 40,000 got in from the to America from China even after he put in place his toothless pandemic. But you want to look at the numbers and look closely at the numbers now that the president doesn't want anybody to look at. You know, we're 4.3% of the world's population, and we have close to 30% of the world's deaths. Think about that, despite the fact that since 1950, the United States has won, its scientists have won half of the Nobel Prizes awarded for science since that time. We dominate in science and technology and medical technology. And yet we were woefully ill-prepared for this, woefully ill-equipped. And that, of course, started with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Joe, I think it started, well before this year, well before the brutal period of January and February and into March, those first 2.5 months where the president engaged in happy talk and ignored warnings, all those things. We've read in-depth reporting on that in real time by newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post. We'll read books about it someday that will be even more vivid. We've seen the email traffic. We know how much the president was asleep at the switch in that period. But you even go back further than that. You go back into the period in the administration when the president eliminated the office for that was supposed to be focused on pandemic preparedness, just cut that right out of the administration, and so left our guard down even long before this thing was even on the horizon. So I think all that is powerful, and I think it's you think about this phases of this year that we've discussed on this show so many times, right? We started with the period of downplaying. We went from downplaying to blame shifting. Then we went to goalpost shifting, right? Pushing the goalposts. And now we're just at subject changing. The president just doesn't want to talk about this anymore. So, on a day when we reached this grim milestone and where Joe Biden was out yesterday kind of addressing the country as if he were president of the United States, kind of talking about what it means that we've lost 100,000 souls to this disease and trying to kind of be honest with the American people, kind of what a normal president would do. Donald Trump has a deputy press secretary put a statement out and pretends like we're not even here. I mean, this is I think the political cost for the president is going to be great, and the shame around this is even greater.
Well, John, you bring up a very good point. He didn't talk about this. He was silent about this. But, of course, he's known since this New York Times article was coming. He's known that the 100,000 mark, death milestone was coming. And he has done whatever he could do, include, something I know about very well, hurt a family in Florida, because he just wants to distract. He wants to have fight with cable news hosts. He wants to have fights with Twitter. He wants the press to follow those fights. He wants to talk about that because he doesn't want us talking about the fact that back on January 22nd, he told CNBC while he was in Davos that he wasn't worried at all, that this was just one person coming in from China and it would be fine. And a month later, he said it was 15 people, but it would soon be down to zero. John, after one warning after another from the State Department, from the Pentagon, from the intel community. He got all of these warnings, and he doesn't want people to talk about that. He wants them to talk about how vile his tweets are, or how dangerous his fights with Twitter is. He wants that to consume the top of every hour on cable news, instead of this 100,000 person mark. 100,000 Americans, John, dead.